Hi everybody, my name is Catherine Foxwell and I am the founder of Floral Evolution Flowers, a florist studio based in Southeast London, predominantly working on weddings and events, but I do actually love gift bouquets too, which is why I was absolutely thrilled that Fashion Minority Alliance asked me to come along today and show you how to make a hand-tied bouquet. And then I'm going to also show you how to use these flowers in a vase, so arrange directly into a vase. So two lovely little projects for you to try at home. So kind of like flowers for me are kind of like the most wonderful thing. They're there for every occasion, in times of happiness, in times of sorrow. To say to people that we're thinking of them, I can think of nothing nicer than to go and give the gift of flowers to friends. It always brings a smile to people's faces and absolute pleasure to everybody. And what I think through the past 18 months is that we're all kind of like getting back to nature, taking pleasure in the small things, and flowers to me are one of those things that brings such joy at any occasion. So I was absolutely over the moon to be able to be asked to show you how to make a beautiful bouquet. And what I wanted to do is to kind of like break it down and show you that like accessible flowers can still be beautiful. They are available to all of us, and it's just how you treat your flowers sometimes that makes them really, really special. And I wanted to go through some tips for you on how to kind of like increase the vase life of your flowers, some of the equipment and tools that you need to do some very simple projects with flowers, and also some of my flower choices and why I've chosen them today. That's why you're aware of kind of like vase life and why some of the supermarket flowers are such things, because predominantly it's because they last longer and give you the most time available to have around your home. And so I, for one, think that's a really excellent thing. And I'm really, really pleased to see more and more supermarkets and florists provide and supply beautiful seasonal flowers. And just let's just lap it up and take those opportunities and make something beautiful. So without further ado, I'm going to go through some of the things that you're going to need. I'm going to show you some simple care and conditioning tips, and then we're going to get on and actually do the project. So for this project, you will need to have some scissors. Now, these are specialist floristry scissors. I wouldn't expect you to have these in your home. All you need is a very simple, sharp pair of scissors. So anything will do as long as they can cut a stem. So you don't have to actually go out and invest in a pair of scissors. And because we're making like a hand-tied bouquet, you will need some string. Any string will do. And so, yeah, that's a really cheap thing to buy if you don't have it in your home. And hopefully you'll use it more and more and more as you practice making your beautiful hand-tied bouquets and get better and better at it. So scissors and string are the two things you're going to need for this project. I'm now going to kind of like go through the kind of care and conditioning tips. And as florists, when we get our flowers in, they don't arrive like as a gift bouquet would if you're in receipt of a beautiful hand-tied bouquet. They arrive in their raw state. And it's really important for us as florists to look after those stems and take care of them to make sure that, they're going to last as long as possible. So when you get your flowers from stock, they will arrive like this. And I've chosen these today because number one, they're seasonal, they're called asters. And we're going to add a splash of colour to our bouquet, which I think is always lovely to have some colour in your bouquet. And as I said, they're seasonal and they're British and I get them from the supermarket. So tick, tick, tick. When they arrive, they're going to be in the cellophane. First thing we do is take the cellophane off. Okay. Part of that. And do that as soon as you get your flowers home. I think it's really important to take them out of their wrapping, because if you leave them in their wrapping, it can cause them the stems to go a bit kind of like mouldy. And so as soon as you get your flowers in, take them out. They will then kind of like be tied. So obviously cut the elastic or the string. And then this is the most important part really for looking after your flowers, is conditioning. So conditioning a flower simply means we take all the kind of lower leaves off the stem to stop like bacteria infecting the water. So anything under kind of like the water lining your vase should never have any kind of leaves or anything in them, because they do go moldy. You can see from these, they are a little bit moldy. So we need to take them all off, and that's called conditioning. So I've conditioned the majority of the flowers that we're going to be using today, but I wanted to show you why it's really important to do so. And all you do, something like an aster, which hasn't got any thorns on like a rose, is simply strip them with your fingers like so off the stems. Now I'm going to do a few of these now. That's why you can just see what I'm up to. Okay. So continue to strip all the leaves off the stems, because bacteria is one of the most damaging things to your bunch of flowers, and that is predominantly caused by the leaves on the stems. So if you do nothing else, always remove the leaves from your stems. So I'm going to do a few more, because I do like a bit of a splash of colour in my flowers. And you know, you may wish to do a bouquet of just one flower type, or you may wish to kind of like buy a mixed bouquet, a couple of mixed bouquets, which normally are a huge spectrum of colours, to arrange your bouquet. But I like to buy the individual bunches of flowers at the supermarket or wherever I'm buying them from, because then that allows you to really mix and match your stems as you wish to do so. So if you can, I'm not saying this is always possible, but if you can, look out for the single variety bunches like these. That's why you can mix your bunches really nicely. So the rest of these to one side. I've conditioned about 10 of these now, and I've taken off all the lower stems, all the lower leaves, sorry, from the stems. And then I'm just going to clear the area here. The next thing that you need to do is to recut the stems. So we don't know how long these flowers have been sitting in water and not being given the opportunity to kind of like have an extra kind of gush of water up into their stems. And so whenever you get your flowers from wherever you're buying them from, a farm, a market, wherever, the supermarket, as soon as you've conditioned them and taken the lower leaves off the stem, then you must cut the stem at a diagonal. The reason we cut them at a diagonal, as I'm showing you here, is to allow the flower to take up as much water through the surface of the stem as possible. If you cut them straight, that is definitely not allowing water to take up as much into their stems, because it's a smaller surface area. So always make sure that you cut it at a diagonal. One of the best tips ever to keep your flowers alive for as long as possible. The other thing that is incredibly important with flowers is to make sure that we keep them in fresh, clean water. Now, I know it's really hard when you get your bunch of flowers at home and they're left on the side. We often forget about it. I do it as well. And what happens if we don't give the flowers fresh water, it means it just really, really lowers and shortens their vase life, because as they sit in the water for any length of time, it's polluting that water, and fresh water will just give it that new lease of life and allow them to live for longer. So change your water, if possible, every couple of days. If you arrange your flowers into a vase, or even if you have like a gift bouquet, or even get them from the supermarket, always change your water, and that's going to keep your flowers alive for as long as possible. You may always also, if you buy from the supermarket, get like a sachet of flower food. Now, in my opinion, fresh water is the best thing for flowers, but there is no harm in using this flower food if you wish to do so in your flowers. It's not going to do them any harm at all. So you can put that in. And the reason for this is to kind of like kill the bacteria in the water that's created by the stems. And so use this if you wish, but the most important thing is to make sure you keep changing your water every few days. So now we've conditioned our flowers, I'm going to talk through some of the flower choices I've made today for our hand-tied bouquet. So as I said previously, these are asters. I chose them because of the colour, because they're really bright and beautiful and poppy, and I am a big fan of colour. And I think it's really lovely to have an explosion or a burst of something in your bouquet, but that is definitely down to personal preference and choice. So as I said, number one, I chose these because of the colour. Number two, because they're seasonal. And number three, they are really, really good value for money, and they are incredibly long lasting. So these are called asters. I then got some nice roses from the supermarket as well. So everything I've bought today, I've purchased from the supermarket. Show you how you can make something beautiful from something that all of us could go and buy. So these are some really nice roses here. And if you notice, I've taken all the leaves off the stems and I've cut all the stems at a diagonal. So for every bunch of flowers that I've got from the supermarket, I've gone through the same process. I then picked some Alstroemeria, which are kind of like a part of the lily family. And these are amazing. They last for days and days and days. Probably, I think I've probably had these sometimes for 14 days. So what I love about them is that they kind of like, they're multi-headed stems. And so they add a bit kind of like volume to our bouquet, and they last forever, and they're absolutely beautiful. And I think probably one of the most underrated flowers ever, because they come in such a beautiful range of colours as well. So you'll find them in oranges, pinks, and as they start to bloom, you'll see like these beautiful striped detailing on the petals. So what's not to like with those? Choice is a carnation. I chose these because they are deemed as a bit of an unfashionable flower, but if you actually look at the carnation, you'll see the real beauty of them. They have multiple stems. I don't think you can probably see that well in the camera, but I'm going to show you anyway. They have amazing range of stems. They're absolutely gorgeous. And again, I've chosen them for longevity as well, because they will last a good 10 days if looked after properly. Okay, so they're the flowers I've chosen. And I also chose some Lysianthus, which again is something that's readily accessible. They're, again, a very beautiful flower. They add a delicacy to our bouquet, and they are also very, very long lasting. So you will have days of pleasure out of the choices that I've made today. But obviously you can choose whatever you like, whatever you see. Any flower will work well. It's just a matter of choice and personal preference. But I like to get the best value as I possibly can out of all my flowers. So they're the choices that I've made. I always also like to add a bit of foliage into my arrangements. I think it adds a really nice backdrop to our flowers. Now, foliage is a little bit more tricky to buy and find, and you don't generally find much of it in a supermarket bunch. So you're going to have to be a bit more creative. And the ways that you can kind of like find foliage are by asking, if you haven't got a garden, is by asking your neighbours or looking in local parks to kind of like forage some foliage. And I like to use it as like a bit of a backdrop to all my flowers, but again, if you can't find it, it's not a big problem. You can do this without it. It just adds another dimension, another texture, another kind of point of difference to our bouquet. That's why it's not all flowers. And so I'm going to show you what I've cobbled together from my garden, because I am very lucky to have a garden. So I've gone for some kind of ferns. I think you generally find these in a lot of places. My mum's garden is full of them, so she's always saying to me, Catherine, take some ferns. And so these are really nice because they're delicate and they have a really lovely shape and are just completely gorgeous. And as with your flowers, it's always good to remove any foliage, any leaves from below the water point. So I'll take about half off of these stems. And this is like just a tree in my garden. I don't know the name of this, unfortunately, to tell you, but I'm taking all the lower leaves off as I did with my flowers. And again with my ferns. And I think, you know, as it's a little bit more difficult to find, I think you only need to get like 3 to 5 pieces of foliage if you're finding it difficult to find. And if you can't find it at all, then don't worry. A really common foliage that you find everywhere is privet. It's amazing. It takes up loads of space in the bouquet. And so I'm sure most people will see a hedge of privet. If it's overhanging, there's nothing to stop you from knocking on the person's door and saying, can I just take a couple of these stems? 9 times out of 10, they'll say yes. And so it's a good way of getting foliage if you haven't got a garden or aren't near a park. The one thing you mustn't do is forage from royal parks, because you will get in a lot of trouble. Nothing can be cut from there. So forage sensitively, make sure that you cut the stem right from the bottom of the plant, and do make sure that, you know, it's not damaging the bush that you've left. So always forage sensitively if you're going to go out and cut from like a park or a field or anything that's nearby to you. So what we're going to do next is the actual hand tie bouquet. And what I like to do, and I think if you're just new to this, is that you group all your flowers into different piles. That's why when we're kind of like mixing it up and making our bouquet, it's really, really easy to pick from each pile. Okay. So on my bench, which you can't see, I've lined up all my flowers into different piles, like so. Foliage in one pile as well. That's why it's really easy to work with. Then cut a length of string. Right, you're ready to tie your bouquet at the end, because there's nothing worse than like having a handful of flowers and not having anything to tie it with. So cut a nice long length of string. Be generous with that. And now we're going to start to hand tie the bouquet. Now this does take practice. I've been a florist for over 6 or 7 years now, and when I first started, a hand tie bouquet was one of the first things we learned, because it's something that you use all the time. Even if you're making an arrangement in a vase, you can still use this practice to create something really, really beautiful. But it does take time and it does take practice. And so don't be dismayed if you can't do it, you know, on your first go. Have another go, take everything apart again and start from scratch. There's, you know, practice makes perfect, and it does in this instance also. So hand tying kind of like involves 2 things. And the first thing is always keeping your flowers and foliage in the same hand. And so if you are right-handed, you would hold your bouquet in your left hand. If you're left-handed, you would hold your bouquet in your right hand. So that's the first thing that you always have to remember. Always hold them in the same hand. Okay. And what I generally do is that I start with a few pieces of foliage, if you're lucky enough to have some, and I just hold them very, very loosely in my hand, like so. Okay. So I'm holding them very, very loosely. And then I'll pick up one of my first flowers and I would add that to my bouquet. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because what you need to do is add in your flowers at a slight angle. Okay, so if you see, I've got my foliage straight and I'm adding in my first stem at an angle. Okay, so that's what it's going to look like when it's facing you. All right, now I'm going to turn it around to facing me, because what you do then, and this is what makes hand tying bouquets special, is that we spiral the stems. And the reason that we spiral the stems is so when the recipient gets a gift, they can cut the bouquet to the length that they desire and none of the stems will break. And that is a fundamental reason why we hand tie in this way, is to allow stems not to break. If stems are crossed over, they are likely to break in the bouquet and also when the bouquet is cut. And so this is called spiraling the stems. And so I put them in at a slight angle there, And then the important thing is turn it 90 degrees. So you are now seeing the back of what I was seeing previously, and you are now seeing the front. So I put the stem in at an angle, like so, facing me, and then I turn the whole bouquet. That's why I can see the opposite side. And then what you do is that you continue to add in everything at the same angle. So everything will go in from left to right. So all your stems will be going in the same direction every time you put them in. So I'm going to show you that again, because this is the trickiest part of it all. Foliage, nice bunch to start off with. I pick up my first stem and I angle it slightly, holding it very loosely in my hand. That's why it looks like this, facing you, like so. And then when I've done that, I turn the whole bouquet. That's why I see the opposite side. I then add in another stem in the same direction, left to right. And this is the most important thing with hand-tied bouquets. Always add your material in the same direction. So I've then taken that nice carnation. I've now added that in the same direction. So that's how it looks. And then I turn the whole thing. That's why I'm seeing the first stems that I put in. And what you do is that you continue to add in flowers and foliage in exactly the same way. When you practice this more and more, you can add in maybe 2 stems or 3 stems at once, and then turn your bouquet. I'm going to continue to add my flowers in. You can see we're starting to get a really nice spiral already. Continue to add my flowers in at an angle and my foliage. I keep turning my bouquet. I'm going to go a bit further out, that's why you can see what I'm doing. And this is where it's really nice to have our flowers in different piles, because then you can just think, okay, I want a little bit of splash of colour there, so I'm going to add in those lovely roses. And then you think, okay, I've got too much alstroemeria in one bunch, and so I'm going to break that up with some nice single-headed carnations. So you keep angling and turning your bouquet. So I'm going to add in these nice asters now at an angle. Remember to keep loosely holding your bouquet, and every time you've added flowers in, you turn and you make sure that you put your next flowers in exactly the same angle, so left to right. So for a nice medium-sized bouquet, you'll probably need about 20 to 25 stems of flowers and foliage. For a smaller bouquet, you can go for like 15, and for a huge bouquet, the sky's the limit. But what I would say is start with no more than kind of like 20 when you're first starting. That's why it's just like practicing the technique, okay? So I'm still adding my flowers in at the angle every time, like so. Keep showing you how I'm doing it. I'm going to move a bit further to one side. That's why you can see what I'm doing. Adding them in, left to right, and when you've put your flowers in, you turn them. And this will take time and practice to perfect, because I have been doing this for a number of years. And even when I do teaching, and I run a mentorship program for underrepresented groups in the industry, this is one of the things I take a lot of time to show people, because if you're going to work in the industry or do anything connected with flowers, you will need to know how to make a gift bouquet. So I'm at the point now where I have added in the majority of my flowers and foliage to have like a really nice bunch. Adding these little splashes of colour. And be brave, you know, there's no right or wrong with floristry. You can pick whatever you like and make something lovely. And I think experiment, challenge, I think they're the best things that you can do with flowers. There's nothing to say that everything should always be white and green or soft pinks and blues. You know, we've got a real mashup of colour here, and I think it looks really lovely. So I'm just adding in my last few stems at an angle, like so. And I'm going to turn my bouquet for one last time. And I'm now at the point where my hand-tie bouquet is pretty much made. And if I show you it from the other angle, you can see that the stems are spiraled. So that means that nothing is crossing over, because every time we add in our stems, we're doing it at left to right, the same direction every single time. And when it transpires into something really quite beautiful, with all our flowers kind of like spaced out because we're picking things from different groups all the time. And basically, by having stuff in different piles, it means that like it's going to allow for an even distribution of flowers throughout the bouquet. And what I particularly like about this is that the majority of it is kind of like quite subtle, and then we've got these beautiful pops of colour just to kind of like excite our senses. And again, I'm going to show you the spiral. Okay, so that's what you're looking to achieve. Your stems in a nice angle, nothing crossed over. And basically, that is the hand-tied bouquet. So, remember we cut our string earlier? To tie your bouquet, you hold it in the hand that you've still got it held in, and you wrap the string around it 2 or 3 times, like so. And then you can put it down on your bench or your table and just loosely tie it. Don't tie it too hard, because if you do, you could potentially snap some stems. So now you've tied it, it's a really good opportunity now, because you've tied it quite loosely, to pull up any stems that can't be seen. So if you want some of these roses to be seen a bit more, you can just generally loosely under the head of the rose or the flower, just pull them up like so. That's why we can see every single face. Really important to see the faces of your flowers. So I've pulled up a few of my roses, and I've pulled up a bit of the Alstroemeria. That's why that was kind of like tucked in too deep. And it's really nice when you do a hand tie to vary the height of your stems, because it adds interest. And so I'm really happy with that now. Show you the finished version from a bit of a distance. Nice and even, lots of flowers distributed right the way through the bouquet. And this is the point where you then cut your stems. So you normally, if you've got like different length stems like I have here, you would cut them to kind of like the shortest length, always at a diagonal. That's why give the bouquet 2 flowers then. At this point, you'll make sure that all the stems in water, which is really important. So cut at an angle. I always like to err on the side of caution and keep them as long as I possibly can with my stems, because that then allows the recipient to put them in a vase of any length and size. So the longer the better, because you can't put a stem back on, but you can always cut a stem shorter. So once that's done, our hand tie bouquet is finished. And like, if it's traveling, you're going to give it to a friend and you don't have things like, I don't know, tissue paper or any lovely gift wrap, you can simply wrap it in some newspaper. Make sure that the stems, if you haven't got a vase or you're not going to put it in water, you can transport it in a vase. That's why it can be given straight to the person in the vase. Or if you're going to wrap it in paper or tissue paper or anything you have available to you, just make sure that you wrap the stems in some damp kitchen towel for transport, or like a disposable cup or anything that you can find, or a bucket. That's why the flowers are drinking the whole time, and then you can give your lovely bouquet to whoever deserves it on that day. So I hope you found that really, really useful, how to make a simple hand-tied bouquet. practice makes perfect, as I said before. Have fun with it, experiment with whatever you have around you, and everything will be absolutely wonderful. So that was our first project. And I'm now going to show you, using the same flowers, how to arrange the flowers directly into a vase, because this is something that's you're most likely going to do. So I have a really nice wide-necked vase here, full of clean water. Okay, if I was getting my flowers directly from source, like from the shop or the supermarket or wherever, I would go through the same process as what I went through with the hand-tied bouquet. So I would strip all the leaves off my stems, and I would cut every single stem at a 90-degree angle. And whilst I'm arranging it, I would have them also in water. I'm just going to move my camera a little bit. That's why you can see the bars. And not so much me. So angle it to the vase to show you exactly the process that I go through to actually arrange flowers straight into a vase. So how I do this is that I normally start with my foliage, and I normally use this as a support. So I crisscross the stems directly across, like so. You can see that. A little bit, that's why you can see exactly what's going on rather than me. It's quite important to see the actual process. And this is like what we call creating a cage for our flowers. So I'm crisscrossing the stems, as you can see quite clearly, I hope, across the vase. And this is providing, as I said, the frame for our flowers. Always nice to put something quite bushy in. In terms of proportion, your flower arrangement should normally be about 2/3 taller than your actual vase. But that's not always what you have to do. That's the rule that we use. 2/3 a flower to 1/3 vessel. And that's normally the same when you're making like a hand-tied bouquet as well. So with these same flowers, I'm now just going to continue to add them into my vase at crisscross. And I always like to start with something quite bulky, like the alstroemeria, which is like our filler flower. Something nice and bushy. Adding in these stems in between my cage. So that's why we can see it from all directions. And wherever you have this vase, if it's on a table, for example, you want it to look nice from all angles. If it was up against the wall, then you would only concentrate on decorating one side. So foliage first, then your filler flowers, which are your bushy ones, like the alstroemeria. And then we come on to like our single-headed stems. I'm going to put that piece of foliage there. Just adjust the angle a little bit. So you can see now that I've got my edges. I'm creating a really lovely shape with my flowers. And I'm now going to continue to add in more and more flowers in a bit of a crisscross fashion. Following my foliage cage. Adding little splashes of colour. It's always quite nice also to perhaps group some of the flowers together, so I'll show you that. I'm going to like put 3 roses in the same position. That's why it gives a really nice splash of colour in one point. So I'm going to put my 3 roses in now. And you can see everything's being held up by my by my foliage cage, the flowers that I put in first of all, okay? So continue to keep adding the flowers at different points in the vase. You can keep turning it around. That's why you're happy. It's looking like from all angles. So this area here hasn't got anything punchy or colourful in it. So I'm gonna Add a couple more pieces in there, like so. And you can really have fun with this. You can have some stuff really tall, like that, or you can dig stuff in really deep. So the principles are slightly different with this than it was for the hand-tied bouquet, because we're keeping everything at quite a similar height. But with this, you have the opportunity to be quite experimental. And it's really lovely by having that cage created by the foliage in the first instance, means that everything is held in place. So I'm still adding and turning my flowers like so. You can see it's starting to really take shape. And you can see how my stems are all being supported by each other in my vase. And I'm going to continue to keep adding them, varying the different flowers across my whole display. I'm going to keep some of my roses quite nice and tall. And like with everything with flowers, I believe that every single stem should be seen. I think that every single stem should be appreciated. And so it's really nice to make sure that you can see all the faces of the flowers in your arrangement. Okay, so I'm going to continue to keep turning that. So it is more important for you to see the actual arrangement than me at this point, so hopefully that's okay. Continue to keep adding in my flowers into my nice foliage cage, with a flourish of my beautiful Lysianthus. And one last piece of foliage just to gaps. There's nothing wrong with having spaces in your flowers as well. It's called, like, when we're arranging flowers, it's called negative space, and it's what draws the eye to the actual flower. So having some nice gaps in your arrangement is also a problem. So if things are a little bit sparse and you haven't got lots of money to spend on flowers, think about having like some negative space in your arrangement as well. So now finished my arrangement, spacing out all my flowers in my vase. I kind of like think that on reflection, which I can pull out, should go a little bit lower. So this is what you can do. This is the fun of arranging straight into a vase. You can think, okay, that actually needs to go a bit deeper. I need to have that one a bit higher. And what you do is just keep varying and playing around until you're happy with a really beautiful display. This vase that I'm using is quite a wide neck, and so it needs quite a lot of flowers. So if you wanted to have a smaller arrangement, you would go for something with a much narrower neck, something around 10 centimeters in kind of length, in diameter, sorry. That's why you haven't got as many flowers to fill the void. So that's arranging straight into a vase. Frame first with your foliage, or if you're just using flowers, and just keep adding things in, different heights, different variations. And I think something that's costs around £5, £5 to £6, it looks really, really beautiful. So I really hope you've enjoyed my two little demonstrations, and obviously enjoy, have fun, experiment, and just immerse yourself in the pleasure of flowers. And you know, they can bring joy to any occasion. So when you're out shopping, treat yourself, buy yourself a bunch, and try out these experiments and these projects. And I hope you've really enjoyed seeing what we can do with some really accessible flowers. Thank you.